And it came to pass that when Jesus had finished these sayings, he departed from Galilee and came into the coasts of Judea beyond Jordan. Having constantly left Judea on account of the envy of those men, now he frequents it from this time forth, because the passion was to be nigh at hand. He goeth not up, however, unto Jerusalem for a while, but into the coasts of Judea. And when he was come, a great multitudes followed him, and he healed them. For neither in the teaching by words doth he continue always, nor in the wonderful working of signs, but he doeth now one, now the other, variously working the salvation of them that were waiting upon him and following him, so as by the miracles to appear in what he said a teacher worthy of belief, and by the teaching of his word to increase the profit from the miracles, and this was to lead them by the hand to the knowledge of God. But do thou mark, I pray thee, this too, how the disciples pass over whole multitudes with one word, not declaring by name each of them that are healed. For they said not that such a one and such another, but that many, teaching us to be unostentatious. But Christ healed, benefiting both them, and by them many others. For the healing of these men's infirmity was to others a foundation for the knowledge of God. But not so to the Pharisees, but even for this selfsame thing they became more fierce, and come unto him tempting him. For because they could not lay hold of the works that were doing, they proposed to him questions. For they, quote, came unto him and tempting him said, Is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? Unquote. O folly! They thought to silence him by their questions, although they had already received certain proof of this power in him. When they argued much about the Sabbath, when they said, He blasphemeth, when they said, He hath a devil, when they found fault with his disciples as they were walking in the cornfields, when they argued about unwashen hands, on every occasion having sewed fast their mouths and shut up their shameless tongue, he thus sent them away. Nevertheless, not even so do they keep off from him. For such is wickedness, such is envy, shameless and bold. Though it be put to silence 10,000 times, 10,000 times doth it assault again. But mark thou, I pray thee, their craft also from the form of their question. For neither did they say unto him, Thou didst command not to put away a wife, for indeed he had already discoursed about this law. But nevertheless they made no mention about those words, but took occasion from hence, and thinking to make their snare the greater, and being minded to drive him to a necessity of contradicting the law, they said not, Why didst thou enact this or that? But as though nothing had been said, they ask, Is it lawful? Expecting that he had forgotten having said it, and being ready if on the one hand he said, It is lawful to put away, to bring against him the things he himself had spoken, and to say, How then didst thou affirm the contrary? But if the same things, now again as before, to bring against him the words of Moses. What then said he? He said not, Tempt ye me, ye hypocrites. Although afterwards he saith this, but here he speaks not thus. Why can this be? In order that together with his power he might show forth his gentleness also. For he doth neither always keep silence, lest they should suppose they are hidden, nor doth he always reprove, in order that he may instruct us to bear all things with gentleness. How then doth he answer them? Quote, Have ye not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, For this cause shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh? so that they are no more twain but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder." Unquote. See a teacher's wisdom. I mean, that being asked, "Is it lawful?" he did not at once say, "It is not lawful, lest they should be disturbed and put in disorder." But before the decision by his argument, he rendered this manifest, showing that it is itself to the commandment of his Father, and that not in opposition to Moses did he enjoin these things, but in full agreement with him. But mark him arguing strongly not from the creation only, but also from his command. For he said not that he made one man and one woman only, but that also he gave this command that the one man should be joined to the one woman. But if it had been his will that he should put this one away and bring in another, when he had made one man, he would have formed many women. But now, both by the manner of the creation and by the manner of law-giving, he showed that one man must dwell with one woman continually and never break off from her. And see how he saith, quote, "He which made them at the beginning made them male and female," unquote. That is, from one root they sprung, and into one body came they together. Quote, "For the twain shall be one flesh," unquote. After this, to make it a fearful thing to find fault with this law-giving and to confirm the law, he said not, quote, "Sever not therefore, nor put asunder," unquote, but said, quote, "What God hath joined together, let not man put asunder," unquote. But if thou put forward Moses, I tell thee of Moses' Lord, and together with this I rely upon the time also. For God at the beginning made them male and female, and this law is older and with much earnestness established. For not merely did he bring the woman to the man, but also commanded to leave father and mother. And neither did he make it a law for him to merely come to the woman, but also to cleave to her, by the form of the language intimating that they might not be severed. And not even with this was he satisfied, but sought also for another greater union. For the twain, he said, shall be one flesh. Then after he had recited the ancient law, which was brought in both by deeds and by words, and shown it to be worthy of respect because of the giver, with authority after that he himself too interprets and gives the law, saying, quote, "So that they are no more twain, but one flesh," unquote. Like then as to sever flesh is a horrible thing, so also to divorce a wife is unlawful. And he stayed not at this, but brought in God also by saying, quote, "What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder," unquote, showing that the act was both against nature and against law. Against nature, because one flesh is dissevered. Against law, because that when God hath joined and commanded it not to be divided, ye conspire to do this. What then ought they to have done after this? Ought they not to have held their peace, and to have commended the saying? Ought they not to have marveled at his wisdom? Ought they not to have stood amazed at his accordance with the Father? But none of these things do they. But as though they were contending for the law, they said, quote, "How then did Moses command to give a writing of divorcement, and to put her away?" Unquote. And yet they ought not now to have brought this forward, but rather he to them. But he nevertheless doth not take advantage of them, nor doth he say to them, I am not now bound by this. But he solves this too. And indeed, if he had been an alien from the old covenant, he would not have striven for Moses. Neither would he have argued positively from the things done once for all at the beginning. He would not have studied to show that his own precepts agreed with those of old. And indeed, Moses had given many other commandments besides, both those about meats and those about the Sabbath. Wherefore then do they nowhere bring him forward as here, from a wish to enlist the multitude of the husbands against him? For this was considered a thing indifferent with the Jews, and all used to do so much as this. Accordingly, it was for this reason that, when so many things had been said on the mount, they remembered this commandment only now. Nevertheless, unspeakable wisdom maketh a defense even for these things, and saith, Moses, for the hardness of your hearts, thus made the law. And not even him does God suffer to remain under accusation. For as much as God himself had given him the law, but delivers him from the charge, and turns the whole upon their heads, as everywhere he doth. For again, when they were blaming his disciples for plucking the ears of corn, he shows themselves to be guilty. And when they were laying a transgression to their charge as to their not washing their hands, he shows themselves to be the transgressors. And touching the Sabbath also, both everywhere and here in like manner. Then because the saying was hard to bear, and brought on them much blame, he quickly directs back his discourse to that ancient law, saying as he had said before also, quote, but in the beginning it was not so, unquote. That is, God by his acts at the beginning ordained the contrary. For in order that they may not say, whence is it manifest that for our hardness Moses said this? Hereby again he stoppeth their mouths. For if this were the primary law, and for our good, that other would not have been given at the beginning. God in creating would not have so created. He would not have said such things. But I say unto you, whosoever should put away his wife, except it be for fornication, and marry another, committeth adultery. For since he has stopped their mouths, he then gives the law with his own authority, like as touching the meats, like as touching the Sabbath. For with regard to the meats likewise, when he had overcome them, then, and not until then, he declared unto them the multitude that not that which goeth in defileth a man. And with regard to the Sabbath, when he had stopped their mouths, he said, wherefore it is lawful to do well on the Sabbath day. And here, this selfsame thing. But what took place there, this happened here also. For as there, when the Jews had been put to silence, the disciples were troubled, and came to him with Peter and said, declare unto us this parable. Even so now also they were troubled, and said, if the case of the man be so, it is good not to marry. For now they understood the saying more than before. Therefore then, indeed they held their peace. But now when they hath been gainsaying and answering and question and learning by reply, and the law appeared more clear, they asked him. And openly to contradict they do not dare, but they bring forward what seemed to be a grievous and galling result of it, saying, if the case of the man be so with his wife, it is good not to marry. For indeed it seemed to be a very hard thing to have a wife full of every bad quality, and to endure a wild beast perpetually shut up with one in the house. And that thou mayest learn that this greatly troubled them, Mark said, to show it, that they spake to him privately. But what is, quote, if such be the case of a man with his wife, unquote? That is, if to this end he is joined with her, that they should be one, or, on the other hand, if the man shall get to himself blame for these things, and always transgresses by putting away, it were easier to fight against natural desires and against one's self than against a wicked woman. What then saith Christ? He said not, Yea, it is easier, and do so, unquote, lest they should suppose that the thing is a law. But he subjoined, quote, Not all men receive it, but they to whom it is given, unquote, raising the thing and showing that it is great, and in this way drawing them on and urging them. But see herein a contradiction. For he indeed saith, This is a great thing, but they that it is easier. For it was meet that both these things should be done, and that it should be at once acknowledged as a great thing by him, that it might render them more forward, and by the things said by themselves it should be shown to be easier, that on this ground too they might the rather choose virginity and continence. For since to speak of virginity seemed to be grievous, by the constraint of this law he drove them to this desire. Then to show the possibility of it, he saith, There are some eunuchs who were born so from their mother's womb. There are some eunuchs which were made eunuchs of men, and there be eunuchs which have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. By these words, secretly leading them to choosing the thing, and establishing the possibility of this virtue, and all but saying, Consider if thou wert in such case by nature, or hadst endured this selfsame thing at the hands of those who inflict such wanton injuries. What wouldst thou have done, being deprived indeed of the enjoyment, yet not having a reward? Thank God, therefore, now, for that with rewards and crowns thou undergoest this, which those men endure without crowns, or rather not even this, but what is much lighter, being supported both by hope and by the consciousness of the good work, and not having the desire so raging like waves within thee. For the excision of a member is not able to quell such waves, and to make a calm like the curb of reason, or rather, reason only can do this. For this intent, therefore, he brought in those others, even that he might encourage these. Since, if this was not what he was establishing, what means his saying concerning the other eunuchs? But when he saith that they made themselves eunuchs, he means not the excision of the members, far from it, but the putting away of wicked thoughts. Since the man who hath mutilated himself, in fact, is subject even to a curse, as Paul saith, quote, I would they were even cut off, which trouble you, unquote, and very reasonably. For such a one is venturing on the deeds of murderers, and giving occasion to them that slander God's creation, and opens the mouths of the Manichaeans, and is guilty of the same unlawful acts as they that mutilate themselves among the Greeks. For to cut off our members hath been from the beginning a work of demoniacal agency and satanic device, that they may bring up a bad report upon the work of God, that they may mar this living creature, that imputing all not to the choice, but to the nature of our members, the more part of them may sin in security, as being irresponsible, and doubly harm this living creature, both by mutilating the members and by impeding the forwardness of the free choice in behalf of good deeds. These are the ordinances of the devil, bringing in, besides the things which we have mentioned, another wicked doctrine also, and making way beforehand for the arguments concerning destiny and necessity, even from hence, and everywhere marring the freedom given to us of God, and persuading us that evil deeds are of nature, and hence secretly implanting many other wicked doctrines, although not openly, for such are the devil's poisons. Therefore I beseech you to flee from such lawlessness. For together with these things I have mentioned, neither doth the force of lust become milder hereby, but even more fierce. For from another origin hath the seed that is in us its source, and from another cause do its waves swell. And some say from the brain, some from the loins. This violent impulse hath its birth, but I should say from nothing else than from an ungoverned will and a neglected mind. If this be temperate, there is no evil result from the motions of nature. Having spoken then of the eunuchs that are eunuchs for naught and fruitlessly, unless with the mind they too practice temperance, and of those that are virgins for heaven's sake, he proceeds again to say, quote, "He that is able to receive it, let him receive it," unquote, at once making them more earnest by showing that the good work is exceeding in greatness, and not suffering the thing to be shut up in the compulsion of a law, because of his unspeakable gentleness. And this, he said, when he showed it to be most possible, in order that the emulation of the free choice might be greater. And if it is of free choice, one may say, how doth he say at the beginning, all men do not receive it, but they to whom it is given? That thou mightest learn that the conflict is great, not that thou shouldest suspect any compulsory allotments, for it is given to those, even to the willing. But he spake thus to show that much influence from above is needed by him who entereth these lists, whereof he that is willing shall surely partake, for it is customary for him, God, to use this form of speech when the good work done is great, as when he saith, quote, "To you it is given to know the mysteries," unquote. And that this is true is manifest even from the present instance. For if it be of the gift from above only, and that they who live as virgins contribute nothing themselves, for naught did he promise them the kingdom of heaven, and distinguish them from other eunuchs. But mark thou, I pray, how from some men's wicked doings other men gain. I mean that the Jews went away having learned nothing, for neither did they ask with the intent of learning, but the disciples gained even from hence.